Hello friends, welcome back. Today we are going to continue with our API and microservices project. If you just watched that last video where we do the introduction, you've got to watch that, otherwise you're not going to know what I'm doing when I'm deploying this app. But now we're going to do the timestamp microservice. Okay, so we want to build a full stack JavaScript app that is functionally similar to this guy. And basically all this does is that if you go to this URL, which is the timestamp microservices free code camp, and then you go to the URL API timestamp 2015-12-25. If we click here, we're going to get a JSON object in response, which has the UTC here, and then the Unix code, which I think is the number of seconds in time. It's an epoch code for the time, and then we're also going to get a string in UTC. Okay. That's the project. And so right now we currently have locally running on our machine this 3000 this application that we're going to just call our portfolio app. Yeah, I mean right now I don't even want this up here. I just want it to be useful programmer portfolio app. So what I'm doing, portfolio. So all I'm doing here is just adjusting the README a little bit so that on GitHub it reads a little bit more cleanly. So instead of it saying this, when I push these changes to GitHub, it'll just say useful programmer portfolio rather than microservice projects. Anyways, we're running it locally here on port 3000, and if you don't remember how to do that, you can go into your terminal and just Control C to stop it, npm start. As long as you go pwd, make sure that you're in your portfolio app folder. You're in the root of the folder. So if you go ls, you can see all of these guys. This is how you get into there. And then to start it, you go node package manager start. And this will cause the server to start running, and then you're here. So what happens now on our local host is if we go to this URL and we go to the API timestamps, we don't get anything, right? And so that's what we want to adjust. And so I'm going to save my work on this README, and now I'm going to close that because we don't need it. And I'll close the package.json, and I'm just going to the server.js. Now again, I've cloned the free code camp boilerplate project here, and I did some adjustments and pushed it live to Heroku. So if you haven't pushed your code live to Heroku, this is going to be especially confusing for you. And so I recommend doing that. But assuming that you've got that guy going, well, if we come over to here, we get this error. We don't want to get an error here. We want something to happen, right? And so if we come to our server, well, we see if we look in our server, we have API hello works, and this gets us a greeting with hello API in there. So let's throw that in there and just double check to make sure that we're working in the right way. So if I go to API hello, cool, we get a 200 response that says, greetings, hello. And so if we were to, let's say console.log, and then we can say, if we add that into here, and we save this, and then we refresh the page here, okay, nothing happened in our console. What we want to do is console log the greetings hello here too, right? I'm really doing the basics right now because I want people to understand how to make this work. So what happened? Well, we're still running the old version of the app. We might have saved to this console log in here, but that does not mean that when we refresh it here, our local server is doing it. So what we want to do is reset our server. So we're going to press Control C. That's going to stop our server, and then we're going to press npm start again, and I'm going to press enter. And this is going to run up the server. It's going to tell us that our app's listening on port 3000. We're on port 3000, localhost, and we've gone API hello. So now if I refresh this page, you'll see, oh cool, so this console log is console logging to my terminal where I'm running the server. This is awesome because now I can use this to kind of debug problems and figure out where I am. The cool thing about this project is that if you go to the local host, the main page is the instructions. And so we can do that. So the endpoint, API endpoint, project URL, API timestamp date string is get. Okay, well, we know the API hello works, so let's just copy that. So app.get, and then we go, well, the URL is going to be API, that's going to be timestamp, and then we're going to have a date string. And then we're going to do a function, right? Function, and we'll pass in, have it do something. And we know from past experience with Node that we will always kind of work on this request response cycle as we go through there. And yeah, so now, I mean, we're responding with JSON. I mean, let's see. If the date string is invalid, returns a JSON object. If the date string is valid, return a JSON having a structure of this. Well, this is easy. We can just say, you know, res.json, and then just always feed in the invalid date. So even though we're passing in a date string, it doesn't matter right now. The only thing that this app does is return an invalid string. But if I saved this, and then I came over here, and I clicked this guy. Oh, no, wait. Why wouldn't that work? Because we need to restart the server, right? Because if I click it now, it's just going to say nothing happened. But if we restart the server, so I come over here, Command C, and press up, restart the server, npm start. Once our server's up and running, I can come over here and refresh this page. And now we get the invalid date. Now, this isn't the right answer, but this is good because it actually shows that we've set up the route and the date string. Well, how do you get the date string, right? Do we see any data in here? Well, we don't really know. So the request is going to have that data in there. So let's just take a look at it. Console.log our request. And I'm just going to add an arrow like this so you can see the rec. And so now I'm going to save this guy. I'm going to stop our server. I'm going to restart our server. And then I'm going to come over here and refresh it. And then in our console, we should be able to see what the request looks like. So I refresh here, and we see this is what the request looks like. So this is a big JavaScript object, right? There's a response in there. There's the query. There's params. Oh, look, the params is the date string. Do you see that? So this huge object, I just got really lucky spotting that in there. I would have just gone, well, params is basically something that you just kind of learn to work with, but we found it in there by just pure luck right there. And this giant object, well, one of the things you can pull out of it is the params. Like I can't even re-find it even though it's highlighted. So our params. So if we want to get our date string, that's what we want to be working with in here. So we could do request.params, right? And that's going to get us this object. That's going to feed into the date string. And then we could say, we could actually call it like we can say let date string equal request.params date string. And then we're receiving, if we were to console.log our date string, make sure you get the camel case correctly. We're not doing anything yet, but now we're getting a little bit closer to what we want to be able to do, because we want to be able to read this string. We want 25, 12, 25 to pop up here. So let's restart the server and then refresh this page, and we see 25, 12, 25. And this is great. This is great news, because now we know that we can take data from whoever's passing it in via the URL, and we can make decisions based on this using just JavaScript that we've used in the past. So cool. Now we want to think about this. I'm going to go back to the instructions. Okay, so the API get, well, actually, I mean, we probably pass a test just right now. If we were to scroll down here, it should handle a valid date. It should handle, okay, should return an expected error message for an invalid date. Well, our app's going to do that now. So let's just push this up and see how everything goes. So I'm going to say get status. We can see I changed the README and the server. If I go get diff, you can see I've changed the README to say useful programmer portfolio. Is remotely testable by FCC. I don't know why that changed. And then it shows that we've made this change where we added the console log in here, and we've added, we've updated our port information, it looks like. Okay, so if I go get, I wanted to add this, right? So get add, and say get commit, add invalid date API endpoint. Okay, so now that I've committed that, I can say git push Heroku master. Because right now, if we were to go to our overall app, let's see, I gotta go back to Heroku. I must have closed it. So I'm just opening up Heroku. Heroku memorizes me now, so you should be able to just go back to Heroku if you're not working in incognito windows. And we can go to useful programmer portfolio. This is the project we're working on now. And then I say open app. You'll see useful programmer portfolio. Now, right now, this is the live production app. My local app, the one that we're running here, is just on my own machine. I'm the only one who can access it. But in the production app, we could click here and we're going to get that same kind of error. But now I've made the changes, I've saved them, I've committed them, and now we're pushing those commits to the Heroku master. And so now it's going to restart the build. If you're looking over here, you're going to see that on the Heroku backend, you're seeing a build is in progress, and you're building up all these dependencies, pruning dependencies. The build succeeded. This is great. Compressing. And it's launching, and now it can be found here. And that is here. And then if we put the API, the timestamps in at the end, and we press enter, we're going to see now our production app is giving us that invalid date thing, which is great. So if we go back over to here, and we've got our URL for our application, this guy. If we take that over to this guy and we press enter, we put it in the solution, say you completed the challenge. Well, we've got one test passing, and that's a great way to start. So that's what I wanted to show you guys, and I wanted to do this one slowly and kind of push up each change incrementally so that we can see that it's working. Another thing for debugging purposes, if you're on a Heroku app, you can say Heroku logs, and if you just press a tail finder in there, you're going to see that you're going to be able to read the server, like the same thing that you read on the server. Oh, Heroku log tails. PWD, make sure we're in the right one. Heroku logs tail. Oh, it needs 2 dashes. Okay, so what this is going to show you is the last logs that were created on here. And so with this one, this is you being able to read the terminal that Heroku shows you. So if you come back over to your portfolio thing, you refresh the page, you're going to see that our console log is showing up there. Our console log was showing up here. Now it's showing up on our production app as well. And so if we were to, instead of passing this in here, we just passed in useful programmer, we're going to see that's actually showing up on the Heroku side as well. So now we're building a web app. We've got our production logs here, but we can also have we could run it locally here. Oops, npm start. We can run it locally here, and we get the same results locally. The app is listening on port 3000, and then if we go to the timestamp, we see that that's console logged out here. And so that's how this is working. I hope that this was helpful. But anyways, let's move on to the next thing. It should handle a valid date and return the correct Unix timestamp. So this is pretty tricky, I think, if you're not familiar with time. So let's just look at the documentation. JavaScript time. I guess we should do date, right? We'll start with date. Okay. So I'm going to open up, let's close this tails, this production environment thing, and I'm going to press Command K to clear the terminal. Our app's listening on the support. We don't really need to do anything with it right now. So yeah, I'm just going to start looking through this date object. So date, yeah, the constructor is the date object. So let's go back over here, and then we can just run node. And what happens if we just go date? That gives us, well, that gives us today's date, right? So, date dot now. That gives us the numeric value corresponding to the current time, the number of milliseconds elapsed since January 1st. Okay. And then, so yeah, and then what happens if we go date.parse? Looks like we don't get anything. It parses a string representation of a date and returns the number of milliseconds. So maybe date.parse. And then in this example, they show us, what do they try to show us here? If we go back, we can actually use the production app to get the instructions right now. What happens if we pass in this number? Cool, well that gets us whatever that is. And date.parse. What if we went, instead of doing date.parse like that, we went date.utc, and then we parsed the parsed date that was passed in there. Okay, that didn't work. Get full year, get millisecond, get second, get UTC date. There's a lot of things you can get here. Dot value of. Month, day, year, to local date string. And so this documentation just shows you a ton of stuff that you can set here. Date not now, do something for a long time. Date dot now, elapsed. Well, your function return. Date dot now, that's how many seconds there are right now. So what we need to do is find out a way to parse. What we're trying to do is find out how to take what we're trying to do now is find out how to take a string that we pass in where it's 25 -12-25, and what we want to do is convert that into a JavaScript object with Unix, whatever, and then UTC here. And so what we want to do is look through this documentation. I'm going to do that off screen because simply researching it takes a long time. Okay, after a little bit of just time off and thinking about it, I realized I should just read the instructions. So your API endpoint is get, there's a timestamp with a date string. We've got that associated. So a date string is valid if it can be parsed by new date. And then you pass in your date string. So let's go back over to Node here. If we say new date and we pass in this, I think this is the one that we want to be able to pass in. Then there we go. Now we have a date string. So this would be passed in value. Let's save that as passed in value and then see what we need to do with it. So the passed in value is equal to that guy. The date string is valid if it can be successfully parsed. Well, let's say, what would be a bad one, right? So let bad passed in value. And I'm just using this to as a way to test my code before I do anything. Hello. If somebody just passed in the string of hello, that would be considered an invalid date probably, right? So if we do the bad passed in value, then we get an invalid date. Okay, cool. So yeah, how can we do that? The date string is valid if it can be successfully parsed by that. Note that the Unix timestamp needs to be an integer, not a string. Okay, so they're saying the Unix, but what we want to be able to get an object back like a Unix and a UTC like that, right? So let's just copy this and throw this into here. This isn't actually quite right, but they're saying the date.getTime. Well, we know our passed in value, and if we go .getTime, that gets us the time. Well, what happens if we go passed in value dot to UTC string? Cool, that gets us this guy. So that's what we want to do right now. So, I mean, right here we're saying if that's right? So what we could say is the bad passed in value. Bad passed in value is equal to invalid string. Bad passed in value, maybe triple equals. Bad passed in value. Invalid date. Oh, okay. Let's try invalid date. Okay, so then we can figure out if what we're getting passed in is bad. If we want to return this guy if it's bad, and otherwise we want to return a well-formatted one. So we can say, yeah. So we could call, let's create it here. Now say passed in value is equal to passed in value is equal to new date at our date string, whatever is being passed in. And so then we could say if, we'll just comment this out for now, but we can say if our passed in value is equal to invalid date, then we want to return this invalid date, right? But else if, and then we could go else, we could say res.json, and we're going to pass in an object to that, and we're going to say Unix is going to be equal to the passed in value dot get time, and then we're going to get our UTC is going to be equal to our passed in value, passed in value dot to UTC string. Okay, so if our passed in value over here, that's what it is right there. If we do get time, we get 1978, but that doesn't seem right? We want to get this kind of crazy looking thing. But if our passed in value is dot to UTC string, we get what looks just like that. The mountain time and 01 January. So this is formatted properly. So I'm pretty confident that we've got this guy correct, but I don't think we're getting this get time passed in correct. That the Unix timestamp needs to be an integer, not a string. If the date string is empty, it should be equivalent to trigger a new date. Okay, we'll handle that later. If the date string is valid, it returns a JSON having the following structure. Unix get time. So how do we get this long string? Because right now we're just getting, if we just do get time like they say here, we're getting this 1978, and that's not going to be what they want. How do we get this long string? Okay, upon further explanation, I've realized that I made a mistake up here. I set this passed in value. Let's make it like, let's make it different. Let's say instead of passed in value, I'll just say let passed in value PIV like that. The way that this is going to be handing this in is going to say date 20, it's gonna be in a string, so 2015-12-25 in a string, right? So now our piv is like this. This actually gives us 2015-12-25, whereas before we had it was 2015-12-25, but we were in 1970 or something like that. 1978, so it was all weird because I was passing it in as an integer covered in dashes, so that was just wrong. This is the way that we're passing it in, and so now if I go piv.get time, we get that wacky number that we're looking for, and if I go piv to UTC string, and when we execute that, we get this long UTC thing, and that's 2015 25 on Friday, I guess, whatever. And so that, and 12th, December 12th. And so that's what we're looking for. And that's actually what is going on here. So if we get an invalid date, we're going to get that. And if we get a properly valid date, then we're going to get this. So this actually tells us, this is good news. I'm going to clean this up a little bit. So yeah, I think that this will actually get us to pass some of these tests. If we come over to here, it should handle a valid date and return the UX timestamp. This should pass. It should handle a valid date and return the crypt UTC string. I think this will pass. It should handle a valid Unix date. This probably won't pass at this point, but let's just push it up for now so we get the practice. It should handle an empty date parameter and return the current time. Okay, so what happens if we go to our app now? Do we have it running locally? I'm going to press Command 2, come over here. It's on listening on port 3000, so we can come over to here. Now what happens if, like right now, we're getting an invalid date? but we haven't reset our server. I want to save this changes over here. So Command S, and then, so what happens if we just pass in an empty string? Oh, we haven't even set this up yet. So this might be a quick and easy one. You know, we can just say, you know, app.get, and then we just say / API / timestamp, and then we don't want to do anything. Then we'll set up a function, and then we'll do something in there. And then within this function, we'll do that request response pattern that we always do in Node. And so within here, what are we going to do? Well, let's see. Let's take a look at the instructions. If the date string is empty, it should be equivalent to trigger a new date in the service. Well, we could say, let's go back over to our node. I mean, we could say, we could be like, let's set a variable equal to now and say that a new date. And then, so what if I click now? Well, it's actually August 26th, 2018 for me. So we could set this as our now date. And then we can say, we can give our response, right? So our res.json, and we pass in an object, and, you know, exact same format as below, but now we're just going to use now. So we're going to go Unix, and we're going to say now.getTime, and then we're going to make a second key value pair with UTC, and we're going to say now.toUTC string. Oops. And we want to execute that, right? Cool. So now if I save this, I come back over here, I press Command C to stop the server, press up, and npm start to restart the server. Well, we come back over to our local host. Right now we were getting a cannot get API timestamp. It wasn't there. But what happens if we do it now? Now we get our API response to our time. So this is great. What happens if we pass in an example from here? Maybe we pass in this 2015-12. So we're looking for 2015-12-25. 2015-12-25. So that's December 25th, 2015. Christmas. December 25th, 2015. And then we get their Unix code. Cool. So locally this is working. But if we were to come over here and run this right now, we know this nothing would change, right? Because if we go to our useful programmer portfolio app and we go API/timestamp, nothing's happening, right? Well, that's because we haven't pushed our changes to our production app. So let's go back over to our terminal. We can exit this node terminal now. We don't need it anymore. So I'm pressing Control C to exit it. And then we can just do our process for pushing our code to production. So git status, we see we've changed the server. I mean, we could check out our changes by going git diff, and we'll see that we've added all that code in there. That all looks good. That's what we want to do. And so we can say git add, and we say git commit. And for our message, we're going to say add the ability to receive timestamps if a string query is given or if it is left blank. Okay, so now we've committed that change. Now we want to push that change to our Heroku server. So we say git push Heroku master. Cool. And now if we were to go over here, we'll see we just started a build in progress. And so we're pushing all our code up to our main production app. And this usually takes a few minutes. It'll depend a little bit on your internet speed. Looks like our build was successful. Oftentimes you'll get errors here, and they might be syntax errors or something like that. If you get errors in here, check for the line. Figure out what exactly. Read the error code really closely. So yeah, now so here we go. It says verifying deployed is done. Go here to check your work. And so we've already got it open here. Useful programmer, Heroku app, API, timestamp. This is the one where we left it blank. Now we can refresh this. And now we're good. That's exactly what we're looking for, right? And if we wanted to do 2015, 25-12 for Christmas, looks like that's invalid. I think it might be 25, 25, 12, 12. Cool, and then we're getting Christmas. So this is actually functioning. And now that this is on the live web app, we can come back over to Free Code Camp and test our results thus far. So if I say I've completed this challenge, we scroll down. Awesome. We've handled everything involved in here, but we've got all of our tests passing except for one. So it should handle a valid Unix date and return the correct Unix timestamp. All right, so I wonder how we do that. Right now, if we go to our main web app and we just go to the head of it, what we're trying to do is get this guy to work. So if we were to push this guy and pass in a Unix timestamp like that, we would see, well, we've got an invalid date, but we're actually trying to get a valid date from this. And so what we need to do is figure out how to know what's going on with this guy and how to convert that using the date to a new one. If I were to come over here, say node, and I would go new date and pass in our wild timestamp. New date. Wow, that worked. 25/12/25. Oh. So we could say there. We could say passed in value. Passed in value. And then passed in value dot get time. That should be working. So I wonder why it's not passing it. Okay, so let's take it to the local server and pass this guy in. Get this guy, pass it in here. The cool thing about the local server is we can get it pretty quickly. So it's saying invalid date. And so we're getting it to this point. So what happens if we console.log the passed in value? And I just go passed invalid. I like to just make that so it's easier to read when we see it. So if I save this, stop the server, restart the server, and then I come back to our page in which we're getting this result because I'm passing this guy to the API. If we refresh our page here, it's saying it's an invalid date. New date. But what? I was getting it here. New date. Passed in value. Okay, so what if we go type of? Because you know what? I passed it in as an integer here, but here I'm passing it in as probably a string. Okay, but in order to run this, so I want to see if this comes out to integer or string. My guess is it's going to come out to string. I'm almost confident, but yeah, just for fun, let's run it. I reset the server because I saved the console log here, and now I'm going to refresh this. Okay, it's being passed in as an object. Oh, wow, okay. So we can feel pretty confident that our passed in value is coming in, it's coming in as an object? Passed in value, get time. That's how we're getting that, not a time. No, it's coming in as an object. So we've got to figure out how to convert the passed in value, whatever it gets. Well, the date string is equal to this. I'm just going to take this one at a time because I'm kind of confused here. We're going to say date string is equal to this guy. But that's not right because if we went type of the date string, we'd get string. So that's not actually how it's coming in here. It's coming in some other different way. Date string. Let's console.log the date string. Type of date string. And object.keys of the date string. So this will get us a bunch of information. And so now I'm console logging this. I've saved it over here on the server. I'm coming back to my main server page. I'm going to cancel, stop the server. I'm going to press npm restart to restart the server. And then we'll rerun this run. Okay, so we're getting the date string It's coming out like that. Its type of is a string, and it has an object with keys. Wow, bizarre. And then our passed in value. This should be really like our translated date or something like that. So we've just got to figure out some way to deal with this. I'm going to research this a little offline. Okay, so I thought about this kind of deeply, and here's what I came up with. So what's happening here is when we run this, when we pass in a number like this, we get this huge long number that can be converted into a string, but it's not working. So what if I come over here, and I was thinking we're gonna want to. Here's what's happening. What's happening is the passed in value is when it's set like this. If we go passed in value and we pass in a string like this, our passed in value. Passed in value is equal to an invalid date, right? But if we go like this and we pass in an integer, our passed in value is a proper date, and that's gonna get us everything that we want. So what we need to do is convert our date string. Our date string needs to be converted into an integer, right? So what I would say here is what we want to do. One thing that I noticed, like one thing that we can do with this guy is we could say, if we were to come over here and say parsed integer, and we passed in the date string, well, it would work differently, because if we were to pass in, let's see, this guy, our integer is going to be huge, right? So our new date, if we pass in this as an integer, it's great, but this is also a giant number, right? This is like 100, like maybe a trillion or something like that. Whereas if we go new date and we pass in the string of 2010 12 25, and we pass in that string, well, that gets us, that gets us proper date as well. But if we go parse integer and we pass in 2010 12 25, then we're never really going to be dealing with numbers any greater than 5 digits, right? So 5 digits is 10,000, like 10,000 or greater. So what we could do is say, if we could do it before we get the new date string, we could say if the date string, if we go parse the integer of the date string, well, is greater than is less than 1,000 is 4, 10,000 is 5. If the date string passed in is less than 10,000. No, if it's greater than 10,000, then we can do something with this parsed int. So what we would do then is we would say, we could say let the Unix time equal to the parse integer. So we're parsing the integer of the date string, right? And so that would be us doing this. That would be okay. So we'd say let Unix time equal parsed int. Parsed int? Is that right? Parse, P-A-R-S, parsed int. Huh. Parsed int of, and then what we would be doing is passing in a string that was equal to that big number, right? Oops, it was right there. This guy. If we parse the int of this guy, parse, oh, it's not parsed. I know it was parsed. Unix time is already declared. Okay. So for now, I'm just going to call this UT because we're just doing it like that. And so UT is equal to that. And now if we go new date, and we go UT, if we pass that as an integer, then we're going to be working. And we could go new date dot get time, and that gives us that. Okay, cool. So if it's greater than 10,000, which these numbers are all way greater than 10,000, and this is going to work until, you know, the year 21. It's going to work forever. You know, that'll work for us. So our Unix time is equal to parse int of the date string. And what we want to do here is we want to create a new date, and we're going to pass in the parsed integer of that. So if we're dealing with this, then we're going to do that. And then we're going to do a res.json. So I'm just going to run this up here. We're going to do a very similar thing. And we're going to call it unixtime.getTime, because now we're passing there, and unixtime.toUtc. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to get rid of these console logs just now because we want to see, I don't want any errors happening. And passed in value, new date string. Okay, so now I'm just going to save this and we'll see how it goes. So I've got my node over here. This is not my production app, so I'm just going to close that out, and I'm going to come over to my server. Cancel the server, restart the server. App was listening on port 3000. And now I'm looking for my local host. This is my production app. It's not going to be working here. We want to come to the production app. And right here was the last time we ran it. It said invalid date. We've got our Unix time in there. And now let's run it. Cool. Something wacky happened on our server. Cannot set headers after they are set to the client. Well, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but we did cause this guy to pass, which is great. That means that we're handling that situation. And so now what happens if we go 2010-12-25? We're getting the right thing here, but what happens if we do something totally wacky and we just say, hello, use full programmer? Well, that's an invalid date, and so we're getting the invalid date. So I think that we're good. This error I'll take a look at later. We don't want to deal with that right now. So I'm going to stop our local server, and you'll notice when the local server stops, if I refresh on localhost 3000, it doesn't work. I'm going to come back over here, and now we're going to push this code to production because we just tested it locally and it worked. So right now on our production app, if we do the Unix time, we get an invalid date. So now what we want to do, like see if I refresh, it'll do it again, invalid date. So what I want to do is say get status, and that shows us we just changed our server code. We don't actually have to do get status. We don't have to do get diff, but it just kind of shows us what we've done. The difference that we've done here is we've just added this system in here. So I want to say get add. So that's actually done something. So now on the get status shows that we've got it there. We want to say get commit .h, and then we're going to say handle the use case where a API request is made with Unix time. Okay, and now we want to push this code to our Heroku master. So we get push Heroku master. Okay, so now we are deploying our code to our production web app. This is pretty awesome considering where we've come from on this free code camp app. And but this is it's a very, very simple, kind of annoyingly detailed backend web application, but it is a good practice for you to start understanding these tools. Okay, so now we're back up here. We've got our URL, which is this guy. If we refresh this page now, we get it. It's feeding us back this time, and so it's working in production. So yeah, I think that might actually do it. If we go here, this is our main web app. If we click this guy, it gives us feedback. If we click this guy, it gives us the feedback the way that we want it. And then if we throw up here something like crazy, like hello, we get invalid date. And so that is exactly what we're trying to do. So what we can do is take this live web application URL that you guys could probably check out, and then, bring it over here and paste it into here, and we can say we've completed the challenge. And there we go. We have completed the first API challenge. I think this one is actually going to be one of the hardest ones, because just to get it up and going was way harder than actually writing this code. Now they say that they want the GitHub link there too. Well, that's great and all, but we haven't pushed our code to GitHub. So let's say let's actually do that. Let's say git push, just git push, because that'll set us directly to our GitHub project. Yeah. 4 years ago. Oh, this might be another. Oh, 4 years ago. No, that's from when that's from the guys that were creating it just then. So now if I refresh this page, you'll see that the server has probably been updated a few seconds ago. Server.js was updated a few minutes ago. Okay, cool. And the reason that we write the commits the way that we do, the messages, the commit messages, is because you want to be able to see when you're reading it back here, update app name, add invalid date API endpoint. This is where our messages come in. And so this becomes useful if you're doing a bunch of stuff. Maybe you made a mistake and you want to figure out where it happened. That's why we write those commit messages when we say git, add, and then -m. Those are the messages that we put in here. You'll see now that the portfolio app is good. And so this is good. We've just updated it. It was updated 3 minutes ago. So we can copy this guy and save this as our GitHub link as well. And yeah, you completed the challenge. So this one's good to go. One thing that I want to do with this is I want to make this main page be, a good place. Like right now, our main page looks like this. I want this to just be a portfolio page. And so instead of having this here, I want to add a new route in, and then just add this as a list of one of the things that we're doing. And so if we go to the views, we can check out our index. So right now, this is our index. Now our index is being displayed when we show here, and our server here shows that our index is there. So this is giving us a route and a directory name for that. Well, let's make one for timestamp. So instead of here, we say get the timestamp, and then instead of going views index.html, we'll go timestamp.html, right? So now we've added a route, and that goes to our directory name there. So in our views, we can right click here and then press A to start a new file, or you could just go add new file. And now we could go timestamp.html. Okay, so now we have a new one. So what I want to do is I'm actually going to take the index.html. I want to take all of this and put it into the timestamp.html. So if I save this, and then our index, what we can say, instead of having it all just be free code camp stuff, we can say, we can simplify this. Useful programmer portfolio app. Right? And then we'll do the same thing as the H2 in the container. And then instead of having all this, we will just have one link to our timestamp. And this is a very, very beginning start, but we're just trying to customize this a bit. And we're just going to say, we want to close that div above, and then we want to say UL, and then close the unordered list, and then we'll make a list item. And within this list item, we'll make a link, and then we'll say href, and we're going to set that equal to timestamp, and then close the A, and then we'll say, what is it? Timestamp microservice, right? Timestamp microservice. If we save that, and we save our server, and we refresh, well, now what we do, we want to make sure we're running it locally. So I'm going to npm start, get our app running locally. If I refresh our main index page, you can see, oh, it's not working. So href. Href, it's not working. That's weird. Timestamp microservice. Link anchor. Come on. I must have made a mistake. This seems like the most obvious one. href. href. Weird. Okay. And then I go back to local and refresh the page. You can see we've got our timestamp microservice here. And if we click here, no such page. Views, timestamp. Look at this. T-E-I-M. T-I-M-E. T-I-M-E-S-T-A-M-P. Maybe our server has something wrong. T-I-M-E-S-T-A-M-P. Views. No such file or directory. Views. Well, I'm going to copy this, and if I come over to Atom, press Command-Shift-F, and then put this word in here, that's showing up somewhere wrong. Okay, so that tells me where it was. So I made a typo here. So we save this, refresh the page. We need to stop the server, restart the server, and then we can refresh the page. And now we've got this just basic kind of head. And then if we go to timestamp microservice, then we can do this guy. And this one still links to the proper ones. And so that'll be able to test our things. And so now we've kind of got the basics of how to get this guy running, and we're kind of building a portfolio app at the same time. And just stubbing these in there for now will be pretty cool. And if we come back over here, we still have the exact same situation, and we can just say I've completed this challenge, and everything's still working. But now we're doing a little bit more of developing a portfolio. We'll make this much better with time, but for now I don't want people doing a bunch of time. I wouldn't want you to do a bunch of design here and trying to make this look cool at this point, because there's going to be some other kind of layers of application stuff that we'll do that'll make this much better. But that's it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I know these ones are much more difficult, and I'm happy that you can bear with me while I work my way through them. But yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. The next project we'll be doing is request header parser microservice. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. We'll see you in the next video.